This bill would also address two other important priorities. First, it provides urgent funding for Ukraine. I'm wearing my Ukraine tie, my Ukraine pin, which I've been wearing because they're in dire straits right now, defending themselves against a Russian onslaught, a brutal conquest. The clock is ticking. Every week, every month that passes without new aid to Ukraine means fewer artillery shells, fewer air defense systems, fewer tools for Ukraine to defend itself against this Russian onslaught. Just what Putin wants.
This is my video update on this Wednesday afternoon, February the 7th. Let's talk about some news. And let's start things off with Tucker Carlson's confirmed interview of Russian President Vladimir Putin. The Kremlin this morning, they confirmed that Tucker Carlson had indeed interviewed the Russian president. Peskov said that the Kremlin is not sure when the interview is going to drop, but this is the worst bench in history, but he confirmed that the interview had taken place. And Tucker Carlson yesterday dropped a 4.5 minute video on Twitter X, and he explained his reasoning for taking the risk to go to Moscow and visit and interview Russian President Vladimir Putin, to visit Moscow and interview Putin. And the risk is not in Tucker traveling to Russia. That's not the risk. The risk is in all of the blowback that he is going to get for actually deciding to hear from Russian President Vladimir Putin, his side of the story. And Tucker is well aware of the fact that he is going to get a lot of blowback, a lot of risk in deciding to interview Putin at this moment in time. A lot of very powerful people are going to be very, very unhappy with Tucker Carlson, but he explained that, look, the U.S. is paying for all of this. The U.S. is paying for this proxy war with Russia, and the U.S. has bet everything on this proxy war with Russia, on defeating Russia. They've bet their dollar, the status of the dollar in the world. They've bet their unipolar position in the world, their unipolar power, their military power. They've bet it all on fighting this war with Russia, or fighting this proxy war with Russia, and the American people have a right to know why, and they have a right to listen to the other party in this conflict, and that is Russian President Vladimir Putin. Zelensky has been interviewed 1,000 times. Tucker said that Zelensky's been interviewed 1,000 times, but we haven't really heard from Putin, and so Tucker took the risk, and he scored the interview with Putin. And as expected, the collective West media, when Tucker's 4.5 minute video went up on Twitter X and everything was confirmed that Tucker was indeed going to be interviewing Vladimir Putin, the collective West media had another meltdown, like a super duper uber epic meltdown. And they especially took offense to the statement that Tucker made about how since the beginning of the conflict, since the start of the SMO, no Western journalists have interviewed Putin. And a whole bunch of Western journalists, collective Western journalists, came out on Twitter X, and they started to complain and whine about how Tucker is wrong, and we've been trying to interview Vladimir Putin, and we've been putting in requests every day to interview Putin, but we haven't been able to score that gig. And they were basically saying that Tucker is wrong. As journalists, of course, we want to interview Putin, but the Kremlin does not grant us access to Putin. And the argument that they try to lead into is that the Kremlin granted access to Putin to Tucker. They granted access to Putin to Tucker because Tucker is a Putin puppet. He's a Putin stooge. He's friendly to Vladimir Putin. He's best buddies with Putin, and that's what they were trying to infer. But but they were upset. They were very upset that Tucker scored this interview, because this interview is going to be the biggest interview in the last 10 years. I think Dr. Steve Turley said this will be the biggest interview in the last decade. And yeah, this is going to be huge, absolutely huge. Christiane Amanpour, she posted on Twitter X. Let me read it to you. I'm Christiane Amanpour, a very sophisticated journalist and international correspondent. And as Christiane Amanpour, I posted on Twitter X, does Tucker really think we journalists haven't been trying to interview President Putin every day since his full-scale invasion of Ukraine? It's absurd. We'll continue to ask for an interview, just as we have for years now. That's what I posted on Twitter X. I'm Christiane Amanpour, a very sophisticated journalist and international correspondent. So yeah, that's what Christiane Amanpour posted, and that's pretty much what all of the Collective West journalists posted, or at least complained about. We've been trying to get an interview with Putin, and Putin doesn't give us an interview. Well, there's a reason why the Kremlin doesn't give you an interview. The reason, let me move over there. Maybe it'll be a little more quiet. It was nice and quiet for like the past 30 minutes, and then the noise started. All right. Maybe it's a little better here. Probably not better, but anyway, let me get through this segment. So the reason that the Kremlin is granting an interview to Tucker Carlson and not to all of the other Collective West journalists is for two reasons. The first reason is that Tucker Carlson wants to interview Putin. Collective West journalists, they want to smear Putin. That's simple. They don't want to interview him. They don't really want to hear from him. They want to smear him. Tucker Carlson, he wants to interview Putin. And that's a big difference. The other reason that Tucker scored this interview, is because he's going to play the whole interview in its entirety. He's going to publish the whole thing without any editing, without any interruptions. None of that stuff. I mentioned this yesterday in my video. There's not going to be any clever cuts or any clever chopping up of the video or anything like that. It's not going to be manipulated in order to paint Putin in a certain light. Nope. Tucker's going to publish the whole interview from start to finish in its entirety, and then the people can decide how they view Putin and how they see the conflict in Ukraine. So that's why Tucker got this interview with Putin. That's why the Kremlin agreed to this interview from Tucker. Tucker said in his 4.5-minute Twitter post, he said that the Collective West, when they interview Zelensky, they treat him like they treat an interview with Zelensky like it's a new consumer brand. I thought that was very clever. He's exactly right. They treat the interviews with Zelensky like it's some shiny new product that they need to promote. And Glenn Greenwald, he tweeted out, who were the American journalists who conducted even minimally adversarial interviews with Zelensky? And then Elon Musk replied to Glenn Greenwald, and he said, to be fair, it's hard for them to talk while giving a BJ at the same time. Yeah, whenever they interview Zelensky, like he's Churchill, right? They gush over Zelensky, like they absolutely gush over him. You know that if they ever got an interview with Putin, it would be the exact opposite. They would be treating Putin like he was the mustache man, Stalin, and Pol Pot rolled into one. That's how they would approach an interview with Putin. And so, the Kremlin is right in denying access. If the Kremlin does indeed deny access to Christian Amanpour to interview Putin, then they're right, because they have an agenda. They go into the interview with an agenda. They're not going into the interview to truly find out what's going through Putin's mind. What's he thinking? How does he see the events that are unfolding? That's not the purpose of their interview, of the reasoning for them wanting an interview with Putin. They want to smear him. So that's the news. That's the big news there. And you know what? Let me cross here. Good on Putin for taking this interview. Good on Putin. He doesn't need to do this interview, to be quite honest. He's winning the war. The Russian economy is booming. The Russian military is stronger than ever. BRICS is rising. The multipolar world is rising. He doesn't need to do an interview with any journalist from the collective West. The collective West, they've been smearing Putin now for the last 2 decades. Just relentless smearing of Putin for the last 2 decades, and Russia for like the last 2 decades. So he doesn't need to do an interview with anybody, especially a journalist from the United States, because it's the Biden White House. At the end of the day, it is the Biden White House that wanted to destroy Russia, to sink the Russian economy, regime change Putin, and dismember the Russian Federation. And that it was the Biden White House that, if they had gotten their way, if they were successful in their economic war, that Putin would have faced the same fate as Gaddafi or Saddam or these guys. They would have done what they did to them. They would have done the same thing to Putin, and they would have dissected the country. I mean, they would have completely dismembered Russia, the Russian Federation, into 6 or 8 different pieces. It's exactly what they would have done. So, he's winning. Russia's winning. There was no need to do the interview, but Putin decided to take the interview anyway. And I think he decided to take the interview outside all of the reasons that I gave about Tucker going into this with an objective and fair mindset and intention. Putin decided to take the interview because he's still keeping the door open. He's still keeping the door open. And not so much for the Biden White House. It's not really about keeping the door open for the Biden White House, because they understand that the Biden White House is not going to change their stance towards Russia. But I think he's keeping the door open because the Biden White House the White House could change in a little under a year, and there could be someone else in the White House that maybe, just maybe, will be more diplomatic and will be more rational and not as emotional as the Biden White House. And Putin understands that he's going to be able to speak to the American people, and they'll be able to decide. They'll be able to listen to him and decide if what he says, if his explanations have any merit or make sense as to why he did what he did. What was his reasoning for launching the SMO? How does he see the world? These are important questions that do affect Americans, because you are dealing with the end of the unipolar moment, and you are dealing with a de-dollarization. which is going to affect everybody in the collective West, everybody around the world. So good on Putin for taking this interview. Everyone says good on Tucker for organizing this interview. Good on Putin for, even to this day, as much as they smear him and as much as they demonize him, he still keeps the door open because he knows that things can change. And and even to this day, he wants to speak to the American people, which I think is admirable. Anyway, talking about speaking to the American people, Biden spoke to the American people yesterday, and he talked about the bill, this big $118 billion package, and Biden was fixated on Ukraine. That was pretty much what he was fixated on. Border, Israel. What else is in that bill? Taiwan, Asia Pacific. But Ukraine, boy, did Biden want to talk about the $60 billion in this $118 billion package, which is connected to Project Ukraine, which really shows you what the Biden White House really cares about. When all is said and done, conflict and war in Israel, Gaza, Taiwan, China, the border, which is the number one issue in the United States at this moment. It doesn't get any bigger than what is going on in the southern border. But you have all of these things, and what is the one subject that Biden is completely obsessed with, fixated on? It's Project Ukraine. His speech yesterday should leave no doubt as to what matters to Biden at this moment, the Biden presidency. It is Ukraine. It is all about Ukraine. The minute he got into office, now to his last year in his term, the most important issue for the Biden White House was Ukraine and remains Ukraine. And Biden, he even this guy, he's speaking to the American people, and he's making the case to approve this $118 billion package, this $118 billion package, and he's telling the American people, while they have this huge problem at the southern border, this crisis at the southern border, he tells the American people, I'm wearing my Ukraine tie and my Ukraine pin. Oh, man. I listened to that and I was just like, oh, bro, what are you saying, man? What are you doing? I'm wearing my Ukraine tie and my Ukraine pin and my Ukraine underwear and my Ukraine socks. Oh my God. What kind of a president, what kind of a leader of any country, president, prime minister, I don't care, a dictator, a king, queen, whatever, gets up in front of their citizens and says, I'm wearing the colors and the flag of another country. Captain of a sports team, I don't know, man. Leader of a rock band. Oh, man, wow. Wow. Can you imagine like LeBron James giving a press conference and saying, before I answer your question, Mr. Journalist, I just want everyone to know that I'm wearing the hat and the pin and the jersey of the Milwaukee Bucks. I love the Bucks, man. Oh boy, I couldn't believe he said that. I really could not believe he said that. Here's a tweet from Planet of Memes. No American president should ever wear any tie or any pin other than ones of the United States. Yeah, this is just common sense, man. It shouldn't matter if you're president or senator or secretary of state or anything. If you're in the U.S. government, what are you doing wearing the pin of any other country, man? Let alone the president. Let alone he gets in front of the entire United States of America, and he tells everybody, "I'm wearing the colors of Ukraine." I'm wearing the Ukraine pin. My God, dude. Oh man, that should be it for Biden. Honestly, that should be it. It should be over for Biden right then and there. If I was a Biden supporter and I watched that press conference, that speech yesterday, I would be like, I'm done. I'm done with this guy. I tried. I did my best to support good old Joe, Scranton Joe. I did everything I could to support him. I really believed in him. I looked past all of his gaffes and all of his mistakes and all of his goofball stuff and all of his warmongering. I tried to look past all of that stuff, his history in the Senate, all of it. But his sniffing, I tried to look past all of it. But if I saw that speech yesterday, I would be like, I'm done. I've had enough. I've had enough of this guy. Oh man. But for the last 2 years, covering this conflict and everything that's been going on in Ukraine, and actually covering everything that led up to this conflict, Russiagate, Ukrainegate, because all of that stuff that was happening with the Trump impeachment and Russiagate and Steele and Professor Mifsud, Hillary Clinton and Robbie Mook, all of that stuff. It was all prelude to what we have today, right? To the time that the world changed. This kind of goes back to what Tucker was saying, that the conflict in Ukraine is the earth, the historic changing moment. When we're going to look back on this, we're going to say that was the time, that was the moment, that was the conflict, those were the events that changed the world. Unipolar gone, multipolar, here we are. Collective West gone, global South, here we are. The military strength of the collective West gone. We have the military strength now of Russia and the East. De-dollarization, the rise of new payment systems. I mean, this was the moment. This is the moment. But as I was covering all of that stuff, 2-3 years ago, I would always say in my videos, every now and again, I would say, Biden, before he was president of the United States, he really was president of Ukraine. And that's a true statement. I would always say that in a joking manner, but it's true. When the coup happened, when the Obama-Biden EU coup was successful, Obama appointed Biden as the guy that's going to run Ukraine for the next 2 years. And that's what Biden did. I remember, Biden would travel to Kiev and he would just, sit down in the presidential palace, and, he probably had a big office there. He would just stroll into parliament and give speeches, and he would tell everybody who to hire and who to fire and how they're going to run their budget and how they're going to run their economy and how they're going to govern the country. I mean, he was effectively the president of Ukraine before he became the president of the United States. And so, he is so emotionally invested in this thing. And that's a problem. And it's not only Biden that's emotionally invested in Ukraine, it's Biden and his entire staff. And they're emotionally invested in Ukraine. Some may say financially invested, if If you take a look at, say, Burisma and Hunter, or Pelosi's kids, or Mitt Romney, any of these guys that had all of their family members or friends on the board of directors of all these companies, they're all invested in Ukraine. And then you add on top of that, on top of their emotional, financial, business investments in Ukraine, you put on top of that the hatred for Russia, this generational, like absolute hatred for Russia, this burning desire, this obsession to take down Putin. And here you are in this huge freaking mess. The collective West just disintegrating before our very eyes, disintegrating. And Tucker in Moscow trying to figure out why. Why did we do this? What was the reasoning behind all of this? And there you have it. And there you go. So, yeah, Biden, he also blamed Trump. He blamed Trump for the fact that the $118 billion package is not going to pass. Very upset with Trump now. They are very, very upset with Trump. You think they were upset with Trump before? Boy, are they upset with Trump now, because they are blaming Trump for not being able to get the $60 billion to Zelensky. They're putting it all on Trump. Look at this title from an article on the Financial Times. Trump's betrayal of Ukraine. The Republicans' refusal to supply arms is sabotaging Kiev's war effort. And this article just talks about how Trump is at fault. And not only Trump is at fault. The Republicans that listen to Trump, they're at fault, because the entire narrative is that Trump was calling up everyone in the GOP in the House, and he was telling them, don't vote for this $118 billion package. And Trump wants to torpedo this package. And if Trump wasn't around, then this package would have passed, and the money would have gone to Project Ukraine, and the $60 billion would have made all the difference. It was just that last $60 billion that would have made all the difference in this conflict, right? So they are furious with Trump, and Biden was like, it's all Trump's fault. Trump. It's Trump's fault. No, it's Putin's fault. No, it's Trump's fault. No, it's Putin's fault. No, it's Tucker's fault. It's Tucker's fault. Damn it, Tucker. No Trump. No Putin. No Putin. No Trumper. No Tucker. It's everyone's fault but theirs. Everyone's fault but theirs. They're blameless. No blame for anything that's going on. Yeah, we've given $300 billion, but it was really that $60 billion that would have made all the difference, right? And Trump, he torpedoed that $60 billion because he was calling up Johnson and telling Johnson, don't do it. And Johnson is afraid of Trump, and so Johnson backed down. This is the crazy stuff that is going through their heads, and these are the narratives that they're trying to spin. Oh man. It was their decisions that have put them in this difficult situation and put the entire collective West in an unwinnable situation. It was their decisions. They're the ones that decided to double and triple and quadruple down on a clown puppet comedian. They're the ones that decided to send $500 billion to Project Ukraine. They're the ones that took the decision to launch the great spring super duper counteroffensive without any air support or a proper military training. They're the ones that decided to launch an economic sanctions war against Russia in order to try and sink the Russian economy and remove Vladimir Putin. They're the ones to blame. No. It's Putin and Trump, and now it's Tucker. Tucker's at fault too. If Tucker did not interview Putin, then we would have gotten that $60 billion to Ukraine. Damn you, Tucker. Damn you. Kicking Russia out of SWIFT. All of these things. They were warned. Don't kick Russia out of SWIFT. Don't place these economic sanctions on Russia. Don't freeze Russia's frozen assets. But nope. They had to do it. They had to do it. So Politico, they put out an article yesterday with the title, EU Capitals Fear Russian Retaliation and Cyber Attacks After Asset Freezes. So according to Politico, the EU is under a tremendous amount of pressure from the US, the UK, and Canada to agree to their little schemes and plans to steal the Russian frozen assets. These Ukraine reparation bonds, or the scheme that I talked about yesterday, which is to use the Russian assets as collateral, all of these crazy, ridiculous plans. The US, the UK, and Canada, they're pressuring the Europeans to just agree to these plans. Just agree to steal the frozen assets, and let's be done with this. Let's get that money to Project Ukraine. And really, that money is not about going to Project Ukraine. I've got this hunch that there's a lot of big companies and a lot of big players that were expecting a very big payday from the politicians in the collective West, and now they're very upset that that payday is not happening, and they want their money. Something tells me that's what's going on. And Biden and all of these collective West leaders are like, oh crap. Monsanto and BlackRock, they want to get paid. We promised to them that they were going to control all of Ukraine and then all of Russia once we broke Russia apart. And now they're saying, hey, we want at least $50 billion for our troubles and our efforts. So that's what I think is actually going on. None of the 200 or 300 billion is going to go to Ukraine. I think that 300 billion is going to go to all of these big companies and all of these big oligarchs in these big companies and all of these big players who were promised huge riches and they haven't seen a cent. And so they want to get paid. The military industrial complex companies, all of these corporations were probably thinking, man, we are going to make trillions once we get all of Russia. You're telling me, Biden, Blinken, Sullivan, that we're going to have all of Russia's territory? That means all of the oil and the gas and the gold and the diamonds. We're going to have all of that? Sign me up. And now they're seeing they're going to get none of that. And they're probably like, dude, we better get something. Anyway, Politico says that the European Commission has stayed clear from the debate on asset confiscation amid warnings from the European Central Bank that this might undermine the reputation of the euro. And so the EU is under a tremendous amount of pressure to just steal the money. But they understand if they steal this money, they're done. The financial reputation of the European Union is done. And the central bank, to her credit, Lagarde is saying, don't do this. Please don't do this. But, they're going to do it. I think they'll do it. I think they will do it. If history is anything to go by, the leaders of the EU, they always resist. They always try to resist until, the real pressure is put on them and eventually they fold. So I think eventually they'll steal the money. And that'll be the end of Europe. It'll be the end of the trust in the U.S. financial system as well. But Europe is going to really be demolished once they steal that money. Because you're talking about 200 billion in Europe and something like 100 billion in the U.S. So Europe is going to pay a very heavy price. How are we doing on time? Oh boy, I've been rambling a lot. Let's see, the Telegraph, they put out an article with the title, Britain's hollowed out armed forces, not ready to fight Russia. Just yesterday, Sunak said that the UK is ready to fight Russia. And now the Telegraph comes out with an article saying, yeah, Britain's not ready to fight Russia. Wait a minute, I thought Sunak said the UK was ready to take on Russia. That's what he said yesterday. I thought Russia was running out of weapons. Wasn't Russia running out of weapons? Didn't Forbes report the other day that Russia in 6 months is not going to have any more artillery vehicles, fighting vehicles? Didn't Forbes say that yesterday? What's going on here? Didn't Ben Wallace, when he was defense secretary, defense minister, didn't he say that Russia is using 90% of its military in Ukraine? Didn't Ben Wallace say that? What are you talking about? I thought Russia was in tatters. You know, washing machine chips inside of planes and tanks. And now you're telling us that Britain cannot take on the Russian military telegraph? What are you talking about? What is this nonsense? Britain's increasingly overstretched armed forces are not ready for a war with Russia. A damning inquiry by MPs has concluded. A year-long review by the Commons Defense Committee found that the government will never achieve war fighting or strategic readiness without urgent reforms to reverse a recruitment crisis and dramatically boost Britain's stockpile of weapons and ammunition. Oh, by the way, the BBC, they came out with a report which said that the UK has been bypassing its own ban on Russian oil by using a refinery loophole to import millions of barrels of the sanctioned commodity in the form of fuels processed in third countries. So not only is the UK military not ready to fight a conflict with Russia, but we find out via the BBC that the UK is importing Russian oil, refined in India, most likely. So the UK is funding the Putin's war machine. Can't make this stuff up, man. Can't make this stuff up. Germany's Bild, they put out an article with the title, Poland is preparing for war with Russia. Poland's preparing for war with Russia. The UK is preparing for war with Russia. Estonia is preparing for war with Russia. Norway's preparing for war with Russia. Sweden's preparing for war with Russia. Who else? Romania is preparing for war with Russia. They're all preparing for war with Russia, all of them. But the Russian military's in tatters. No more vehicles in 6 months. No more fighting vehicles in 6 months. They're out of tanks. They're out of planes. The Russian military's a mess. Ukraine is winning, but we have to prepare for a war with Russia. You know, this would all make sense, honestly. This whole fear-mongering about a war with Russia so that they can get the citizens to relinquish more control to their governments and so that they can get more money into the MIC companies. That's what this is really all about. But, you know, this narrative that they're trying to spin would make a lot more sense if they would stop talking about Russia running out of weapons and stop talking about how the Russian military is so weak. Then maybe they can get people on board with this Russia's going to invade us tomorrow narrative. But they're not willing to do that. Isn't that interesting? I find that so fascinating. On the one hand, they tell us every single day that the Russian military is just getting demolished by the Zelensky military. I mean, demolished. And that any day now, Russia's going to run out of ammo and weapons and missiles, and they're using shovels and washing machines and everything, right? I'm like shaking my head. You know, they tell us this every day. But on the flip side, they want their citizens to give up more power to the government and more money to the MIC so that they can prepare for this big Russia invasion of all of Europe. Which one is it? Just, if you really want to sell this to the benefit of more power to you, more centralized power, and more money to the MIC, Europe, if you really want to sell this, just come out with the truth, which is that Russia's winning this war. Russia's winning it in a very big way. They've been winning it from the beginning. Russia's military is booming. Russia's military production is booming. It's beating out anything we could produce in any capacity that we could come up with in the collective West. The Russian military is the strongest in the world, and the Russian economy is stronger than ever. Because Russia is so strong on every point at this moment in time, we need to build up our defenses. If you just say that, then maybe you could win some people over. But they refuse to say that. You know why? Because if they were to say that, they would then admit that they were wrong about Russia. And they can't do that. For them, it would mean that Russia is equal, if not better. And their ego can't allow them to admit that. They can't admit that Russia outproduces them. They can't admit that Russia outsmarted them. They can't admit that the Russian military is better than theirs. So they're stuck in this weird place where they have to sell us about the weakness of the Russian military and of the Russian people, while at the same time trying to sell us on the fiction that Russia is going to take over all of Europe, unless. Anyway, all right. So one more story, two more quick stories, and then we'll do a clown world. This video is going to be a long one. All right. Very quickly, Sweden is closing their Nordstream investigation. They're going to end their Nord Stream sabotage probe, according to Reuters, and they're going to hand over evidence to Germany. From what I read, Sweden's going to make an announcement either today or tomorrow about what they've uncovered in their probe. But from what I understand, they've been focusing on the Andromeda, Gilligan, the skipper, and Marianne and the professor, the millionaire and his wife. And they've been focusing on the Andromeda and Poland's involvement in all of this. And from what I understand, they have something to hand over to Germany, but it's not going to be any big earth-shattering stuff. And so it all goes to Germany. No. Whatever, dude. Whatever, man. just admit that the U.S. blew up that pipeline, for God's sakes. Oh boy. Anyway, an update on the Ecuador banana crisis, the row between Russia and Ecuador. The Independent, they put out an article with the title "Diplomatic Tensions Between Ecuador and Russia Over Military Equipment Threaten Banana Exports." So basically, Ecuador is now they're trying to put together all the paperwork and all the documentation that Russia is asking for in order to prove to Russia that the bananas that they export to Russia don't have this dangerous fly, this fly excrement or fly eggs in their produce, and so the bananas are safe to be exported to Russia. So Ecuador got $200 million to sell weapons to the United States, Soviet weapons, which needed Russia's permission. Russia had to give their permission in order for Ecuador to sell those weapons to the United States. They didn't go to Russia for permission. They just decided to take $200 million from the United States and give over those weapons. The U.S. will give those weapons to Ukraine. And in return, Ecuador got $200 million. Man, they were bought on the cheap. Boy, Ecuadorian politicians, they're really cheap to buy. Zelensky doesn't even get up out of bed for $200 million. $200 million. This is nothing. This is like 20 homes. This is nothing. I don't even take a meeting for $200 million. But yeah, Ecuador, for $200 million, they decided to break their agreements with Russia, antagonize Russia, and give over their weapons to the United States. And Russia decided to come up with this whole dangerous fly in the bananas type of thing for Ecuadorian food and bananas that get imported into Russia. And it's going to cost Ecuador, I read it's going to cost Ecuador $700 million. Yeah. Russia gets a whole bunch of bananas from Ecuador. $700 million worth of banana and food imports from Ecuador. Talk about a huge L. That is a huge L. Oh, boy. All right. Clown World time. Clown World time. Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley. Let's see. She came in second place in a primary in Las Vegas. According to NBC News, Nikki Haley loses to none of these candidates in the Nevada GOP primary. Nikki Haley faced no major challenger Tuesday in Nevada's presidential primary. She still lost, according to NBC projections. So Nikki Haley lost to none of these candidates. They preferred no one to Nikki Haley. We'd rather have no president than Nikki Haley. That is embarrassing, man. And one more quick clown world. Trudeau accused of lying about inviting World War II NAZI veteran to Zelensky event. And the opposition leader, Pierre Poilievre, he has urged Trudeau to resign. He wants Trudeau to resign because information has come out which shows that even though Trudeau stated that he had no idea that this guy was invited to speak in the parliament and who he was and all of this nonsense, he had no idea. And then he got the speaker of the parliament to take the fall for him. New evidence has come out which shows that Trudeau actually was the person who invited this guy to the event with Zelensky clapping for this NAZI SS guy. Yeah. Zelensky curse. It's time to do your thing, to work your magic on Trudeau. Anyway, that's the video, everybody. The Duran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, ODYSEE, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfin, and Twitter X. 15% off all t-shirts. Take care.